Class, we were looking at the follicular phase, and I was doing a synopsis. Let's go back. FSH in the follicular phase, which is the first phase after the bleed, after menstruation, is the main hormone that causes the follicles to grow to a Graafian follicle, causes aromatase secretion. Aromatase is the enzyme that can convert male hormone to female hormone. And estradiol, female hormone, along with FSH, increases FSH on the granulosa. Now, all of this here, as we alluded to, this FSH increase of gonadotrophin releasing hormones and everything like this, and estradiol is a positive feedback, and FSH also causes LH receptors to be put. Rapid rising causes the hypothalamus to secrete pulsatile incretion of gonadotrophin releasing hormone. The estradiol augments the anterior pituitary to respond to that, and also to put LH receptors. And this then causes, through this positive feedback, an LH surge, and this LH surge is responsible for ovulation. The LH surge is responsible for ovulation. Okay, so that's the synopsis. You can go back on your own and look at some of the PowerPoints. Okay, increase in LH leads to more testosterone from the theca interna, and the FSH leads to more aromatase converting testosterone to estradiol, and this causes an increased gonadotrophin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus, along with increased sensitivity of the anterior pituitary to gonadotrophin releasing hormone, which then leads to more LH secretion. And so positive feedback, the loop starts. This ultimately leads to a massive LH surge 24 hours before ovulation. 24 hours, ultimately leading to ovulation. The LH surge triggers ovulation. And then I have why. Because gonadotrophin releasing hormone stimulates a simultaneous anterior pituitary secretion of LH and FSH. Okay. So, in other words, the LH surge leads to the ovulation. All right. This again shows what this is showing. Okay, so we go further. That's the follicular phase. That's that first phase. Follicular phase again is the one that causes the endometrium to thicken prior to ovulation. The ovulatory phase. Okay, the ovulatory phase. FSH causes the Graafian follicle to bulge out of the ovary wall. We've seen a picture of that where it's bulging out. The LH surge begins about 24 hours before ovulation and stimulates the Graafian follicle to rupture, releasing the secondary oocyte. The secondary oocyte has been arrested, as you may remember, in metaphase 2 and will not finish meiosis unless fertilization occurs. So let's move some of these up here. Okay. So the luteal phase. Okay. The luteal phase that we had. We had the follicular phase in the ovary. Then we had ovulation. And now we're to this luteal phase, which is primarily due to luteinizing hormone. After ovulation, luteinizing hormone stimulates the ruptured follicle to become a corpus luteum. And so the ruptured follicle means the follicle is what's left behind in the ovary. The follicle again, over here, is what's left behind, because remember these cells here. So what was ovulated again was the oocyte in metaphase 2, the zona pellucida, and the corona radiata. That's what. But the ruptured follicle is left behind, this ruptured area, and it becomes something called the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum here secretes both estradiol and progesterone. Progesterone levels rise after ovulation and peak 1 week. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's go back. So they're going to peak 1 week. Let's see if I can find something here. And that's what we're looking at. Okay. So that the layers then, trying to see where I had that. So the layers right here, the luteal phase, will be after ovulation. The corpus luteum is secreting hormones, estradiol, progesterone. The progesterone level rises after ovulation because there's more progesterone than estrogen being produced. And high levels of estradiol and progesterone feed back onto to inhibit FSH and LH secretion. Okay. That prevents another ovulation from occurring. So we'll come here. There may also be inhibin from the corpus luteum, which helps inhibit FSH. So the thing is to inhibit FSH and LH. The drop in FSH and LH and secretion of inhibin prevent another follicle from developing to the point of ovulation, so the lady does not double ovulate. Now, I'm not saying this cannot happen. In gynecology, this can happen. That's how fraternal twins can be formed. But generally, there's only one ovulation per cycle, generally. At the end of one cycle, inhibin secretion drops and new follicles develop. So then, once at the end of the total cycle, the inhibin level drops, and all of a sudden, new follicles can develop for the next month. Estrogen and progesterone levels drop in the late luteal phase around day 22, and the corpus luteum regresses due to prostaglandin F2 alpha. LH could keep the corpus luteum functioning, but levels stay low during the luteal phase because of high levels of ovarian steroids, because ovarian steroids are inhibiting FSH and LH from being secreted. These low levels of hormone cause the menstrual bleed because the endometrium starts to lose its stimulus, and that's where the flow of blood as the stratum functionalis is being cleared out, and also causes the new follicles to be able to develop because FSH now can start to rise. And then when the corpus luteum is no longer functioning, it forms a scar tissue in the ovary called the corpus albicans. The corpus albicans in the ovary. Okay, so that's what ultimately happens when the corpus luteum regresses too much. Regresses and forms a scar tissue. So here's the corpus luteum. You can see that space left because it has popped out. This here has popped out. Ovulation. Okay, here's the endocrine control we've talked about. Here's the cyclical changes in the endometrium. So what we have been talking about again was in the ovary. Now again, we're going back to the endometrium. So we're going back to the endometrium. The menstrual cycle begins with menstruation. And everything bleeds out at the end of the previous ovarian cycle. The development of the endometrium is regulated by secretion of estradiol and progesterone in the ovaries. Estrogen, okay. So estrogen is being stimulated to be secreted by FSH again. The estrogen from the ovary stimulates the endometrium to grow, which is proliferation of this endometrium, getting thick. So just in case a conceptus, zygote, fertilized egg, can be called many things, comes, it can embed into here, this stratum functionalis. Okay. The proliferative phase, again, which I spoke of, occurs while ovary is in the follicular phase. Follicular phase, FSH, increases levels of estradiol, stimulates the growth of the stratum functionale of the endometrium. Spiral arteries develop. The endometrium also becomes more vascular and develops progesterone receptors. So these spiral arteries start developing. Okay, which are in the stratum functionale. Okay. This again is that proliferative phase, follicular phase. So the proliferative phase would be for the endometrium term. The follicular phase would be for the ovary. Cross-referencing. Okay. Then what will happen? Be sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. All right. Then what will happen is the proliferative phase. Now we go into the secretory phase. The secretory phase of the endometrium is after ovulation, and where the endometrium, stratum functionalis, starts to accumulate glycogen within the cells. Okay, so here we go. This is a progesterone issue. Secretory phase is a progesterone. Occurs while the ovaries and the luteal phase. Okay. Corpus luteum, again, is secreting that progesterone. Secretion of progesterone stimulates the development of uterine glands which store glycogen. The endometrium also becomes even thicker and more vascular. Endometrium is prepared to nourish a growing embryo if the oocyte is fertilized, as we've said. Okay, and you need that glycogen because you haven't developed an afterbirth. So this developing embryo has to be nourished. Must be nourished. Okay. Then comes the menstrual phase. If no pregnancy occurs, it's as a result of the fall of both the estrogen and the progesterone when the corpus luteum disintegrates. Because remember, that was the thing producing the estrogen and progesterone. When that goes away, decreases, there's no stimulus, so the stratum functionalis ceases to exist and is bled out. So the spiral arteries in the stratum functionale of the endometrium constrict, leading to death of the endometrial cells in the endometrial layer with shedding, sloughing, and that's menstruation. Okay. So here's the phases that you can look at on your own. Here again is this same picture here. Polycystic ovary disease, to make it simple, also called Stein-Leventhal syndrome, is a common disorder where for some reason the egg develops but it does not deliver, doesn't ovulate, and it doesn't do it for several months. So then you're going to start to have what? A buildup of many follicles, Graafian follicles, and it's called polycystic ovary disease. And there are certain hormonal changes that occur, and those hormonal changes can lead to amenorrhea, no menstrual period, dysmenorrhea, painful menstrual period, reduced fertility, excess growth of body hair. The reason for that, there's a lot of androgen. The androgen level in the female increases. And because of that, male pattern baldness and acne, because acne is due to an androgenic stimulation. Okay. So I am going to end this one right here. And then on the next one, we'll start there. We're talking about pheromones. Okay.